The sound of your own child's relief at your impending death is a frequency that vibrates in the very marrow of your bones. I spent 40 years building a skyline out of red dirt and sheer will, only to find myself being buried alive in the master bedroom of a mansion I paid for. My name is Samuel. For 4 decades, I was the man who shaped this city. I knew every zoning law, every corrupt contractor, and every honest bricklayer from here to the coast. But at 79, my empire has been reduced to the dimensions of a king-sized mattress and the 4 walls of a room that smells of lavender-scented furniture polish and the slow, stagnant air of a tomb. For years, I have watched my son, Marcus, and his wife, Chloe, circle me. They don't see a father or a mentor. They see a thermal gust, a lingering obstacle standing between them and the 8-figure liquidity in my private accounts. The betrayal didn't happen with a dramatic confrontation or a sudden blow. It happened in the quiet neglect, the skipped meals, the forgotten heart medications, and the way they stopped looking at me as a man and started looking at me as a hurdle. It was a suffocatingly hot Tuesday afternoon when the mask finally slipped. The air conditioning was humming, a low, expensive drone that failed to cut through the tension at the dinner table. It was one of those rare occasions where they forced me to sit with them, a performance of family unity for the sake of the maid, or perhaps their own dwindling consciences. "Pass the salt, Marcus," I said. My voice sounded thin, like gravel being crushed under a heavy boot. Marcus didn't even look up from his phone. His thumb flicked over the screen with a practiced greed. "You don't need salt, Dad. Your blood pressure is high enough to power the neighborhood. Dr. Vane said we need to keep your diet strictly controlled." Chloe chimed in, her voice a sharp, manicured blade that always seemed to be searching for a vein. "He's just being difficult, honey. It's the only thing he has left to do. Spite and high cholesterol." I looked at her, at the diamond necklace I'd bought her for their 5th anniversary. "I'm still in the room, Chloe. I haven't lost my hearing along with my mobility." "Are you still here, Samuel?" Chloe asked, finally locking her cold blue eyes onto mine. "Because you haven't said anything of value in 6 months. You just sit there, taking up space and breathing the air we're going to have to pay the estate taxes on soon enough."
"Honestly, the way you linger is almost selfish." Marcus didn't even flinch at her cruelty. He just sighed, finally putting his phone down. "Let it go, Chloe. He's tired. Aren't you tired, Dad? You look like you're ready for a long, long nap." I felt it then, a sudden, sharp flutter in my chest. It wasn't the usual skipped beat I'd grown used to. It was a dizzying, electric spell that sent the room spinning into a blurred mess of mahogany and expensive crystal. My forehead drifted toward the table, the wood cool against my skin. I didn't actually lose consciousness. My mind remained pinned to the back of my skull, sharp and observant, even as my body surrendered to the vertigo. But as my eyes fluttered, I saw it. I saw the look on Marcus's face. It wasn't terror. It was an ugly, hungry hope. He didn't reach for his phone to call an ambulance. He reached for his wine glass and took a slow, steady sip. "Is he finally going?" Chloe whispered. "Wait," Marcus replied. "Let's see." I decided, in that split second of crystalline clarity, to remain under. If they wanted a ghost, I would give them one. I let my body go limp. I let my jaw slacken. I let the darkness of the episode take me, becoming a passenger in my own skin. "Check his pulse, Marcus." Chloe's voice was closer now. Marcus stood up. I felt his fingers on my neck. They were clammy. "He's still fluttering," he said, "but he's out. Call Vane, not the hospital. Call the private line. We don't need a public record of this until we're ready." They carried me to my room. Marcus grabbed my shoulders, and Chloe grabbed my feet. They handled me like a sack of grain, indifferent to the way my head lolled back or how my arms scraped against the doorframe. They dumped me onto the bed I'd shared with my Martha for 30 years, and left me there while they went into the hall to speak with the doctor they'd been paying under the table. For the next 24 hours, I became a living ghost. I lay perfectly still, breathing shallowly, listening to the house believe I was already halfway to the morgue. It was a slow-motion car crash of the soul. Lying there, I had to endure the physical humiliation of being touched and prodded by a man I knew was a hack, a man Marcus had bought and paid for. He's stable, but unresponsive, I heard Dr. Vane say from the foot of my bed. Likely a massive stroke. He could linger like this for days, or he could slip away in an hour.
Given his age in the previous episodes, it's best not to intervene too aggressively. Comfort care only. Is he aware of anything? Chloe asked. Unlikely, the doctor said. The cognitive centers are dark. He's just a machine running out of fuel now. I'll sign the preliminary paperwork. We can wait until the morning to make it official. Thank you, doctor, Marcus said. There was a sound of a checkbook being opened, the scratch of a pen. We appreciate your discretion. Once the doctor was gone, the silence of the room was broken by the sound of drawers being opened. Chloe didn't even wait 10 minutes. She moved like a scavenger through my things. I felt the mattress shift as she leaned over me. Her hand, cold and devoid of even a shred of daughterly warmth, reached under my pillow. She was searching for it, the small brass key to the safe deposit box at First National, the one key that held the codes to my offshore accounts and the original unamended will. Where is it, Marcus? She hissed. He always kept it here. I don't know, Marcus replied. Check the safe in the library again. He's probably hidden it. He was always paranoid. I lay there in the darkness, listening to the woman I welcomed into my family treat my life like a bargain at an estate sale. I realized then that I had spent 40 years building a house, but I had failed to build a home. If anyone's listening to the echoes of a broken heart, don't make the mistake I did. Don't wait until you're a ghost to see who truly loves you. Hit that subscribe button, because the truth I heard next changed everything. Chloe gave up on the pillow and stood by the window. We're cutting it close, Marcus. The developer is coming at 10 tomorrow morning. We need that signature. We don't need his hand to move, Chloe, Marcus said. His voice was different now, harder, more confident. He sat on the edge of my bed, the same bed where I used to read him stories about knights and dragons when he was a boy. I felt the weight of his body pressing into the mattress. We just need to guide his Ben over the line one last time. If he doesn't wake up, and Vane will make sure he doesn't, I'll use the power of attorney stamp we had made last month, the one we forged using his old blueprints as a signature guide. Chloe laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound. The city council already approved the zoning change for the high-rises. Once this place is raised, we'll be clear of this old man smell by Friday. We can finally move to the coast.
High-rises. They were going to tear down the estate. They were going to destroy the gardens Martha had spent 20 years planting. They were going to erase every trace of my life's work for a quick payout from a predatory developer. Are you sure about the medication? Chloe asked. What if the tox report shows something? Marcus huffed. Vane isn't going to order a tox report. And besides, it was just a few extra milligrams of his own blood thinners. It's an accidental overdose. We've been thinning his blood for weeks, Chloe. This collapse was inevitable. My heart hammered against my ribs, a trapped bird in a cage of bone. It was a wonder they couldn't hear it. They had been poisoning me. My own son had been slowly drained the life out of me with the very medicine meant to save me. They weren't just waiting for me to die. They were the architects of my extinction. They spoke about me as if I were a piece of junk to be hauled away, a structural flaw in their plan for a more luxurious life. He looks so small now, Chloe said. He just looks like a pile of laundry. A pile of laundry. That was the sum total of my 79 years in her eyes. Let's go, Marcus said. I want to look over the developer's contract one more time. We need everything ready for 10 o'clock. Leave the lights off. There's no point in wasting electricity on a man who can't see. The door clicked shut. The sound echoed through the room like a gavel. I lay there in the absolute darkness. For a long time, I didn't move. I couldn't. The weight of the betrayal was a physical pressure on my lungs. My son, my only child, the boy I'd taught to hunt, the boy I'd walked through his first construction site. He had been calculating the cost of my funeral while I was still paying for his lifestyle. He had stolen my money, my health, and my peace. I stared at the ceiling I had designed myself. I remembered the day the drywall went up, the day I told Martha that this house would stand for 100 years, a testament to our family. I realized now that the foundation was rotten, not the wood or the stone, but the blood. But as the clock on the mantel ticked toward midnight, a different kind of sensation began to stir in my limbs. The vertigo was gone. The weakness in my chest was replaced by a cold, radiating heat. It was a familiar feeling. It was the feeling I used to get when a competitor tried to lowball me on a land deal.
It was the feeling of a man who was about to build something out of the ruins. The old Samuel, the man who fought developers in boardrooms for decades, the man who knew every secret of this city, began to wake up. I wasn't going to die in this bed. I wasn't going to be the laundry Chloe wanted to fold and put away. I reached out my hand in the dark. It was steady. The tremor was gone. I looked at the digital clock. 12:03 a.m. The developer was coming at 10. Marcus thought he was the one in control of the timeline. He thought he was the one holding the pen. He didn't know that the most dangerous thing you can do is leave an architect with nothing but a blank slate and a reason for revenge. I am the man who built this house, and I am the only one who knows where the structural supports are hidden, and I am the only one who knows how to make the whole thing come crashing down on their heads. Courtroom may be judge ne ai, but such a pele hiliki chachukie. I shifted my weight, the silk sheets rustling like a warning. The darkness was no longer a prison. It was a cloak. I was no longer a patient, and I was no longer a father. I was a living ghost with a very long memory, and the sun hadn't even come up yet. Court was officially in session, and I was the only one with the gavel. I am Samuel, and I am the architect of your ruin. Justice is a building that takes years to design, but only seconds to collapse on those who built it on lies. For decades, I calculated the load-bearing capacity of steel and stone, but I never thought to measure the structural integrity of my own son's soul. By 3 a.m., the shadows in my bedroom felt like old friends, hiding the fact that the ghost they had spent the evening mourning was very much alive. I lay there, listening to the house settle, the silence only broken by the distant, rhythmic clinking of ice against glass from the kitchen downstairs. They were celebrating. They were drinking my vintage Macallan, toasted to the death of the man who had bought the very bottle they were draining. I rose from that bed with a strength that didn't come from my tired muscles or my trembling knees, but from a pure, distilled rage that burned hotter than any fever. Every movement was a calculated risk. I slid my feet onto the hardwood floor, the coldness of the wood anchoring me to reality. I moved through the hallway like a thief in my own life, my heart hammering against my ribs.
I reached the library, the smell of old paper and leather-bound secrets welcoming me home. I went straight to the shelf near the window, to the hollowed-out architectural manual I had prepared months ago when the first seeds of doubt began to sprout. Inside sat the burner phone, its small screen glowing like a beacon of hope in the dark. I dialed the only number I knew by heart, the only man who still remembered the Samuel who owned this city before the stroke tried to take it. "Sam?" The voice on the other end was rough, gravelly, and instantly alert. "It's 3 in the morning. Is it time?" "It's time, Elias," I whispered. "I need a wolf, not a doctor. They're moving faster than I thought. They think I'm in a coma. They think the house is theirs." "I'll be at the garden gate in 10 minutes, Elias replied. "Don't go back to sleep, Sam. Not until the job is done." I stood by the library window, watching the moonlight dance on the garden Martha had loved so much. I could see the silhouette of Elias moving through the trees, a retired lieutenant who moved with more grace at 70 than my son did at 40. He didn't come to the door. He stayed in the blind spots of the internal security cameras Marcus had installed to monitor my decline. I met him at the French doors of the study. Elias looked at me, his eyes scanning my face for signs of the man I used to be. "You look like hell," he whispered. "I've been living in a tomb, Elias," I said. "It tends to ruin the complexion. Do you have the sniffer?" Elias tapped a small black device in his pocket. "Everything they've sent or received on the local network in the last 6 hours is being mirrored to my tablet. We just need to get into the home office to pull the physical files. Where are they?" "Marcus has been using my old study," I said, the words feeling like a betrayal in my mouth. "He thinks he's the king of the castle now.
He's drinking in the kitchen with Chloe. We have maybe 20 minutes before they come up to check if I'm still breathing. We moved through the shadows of the house, a surgical operation conducted in the dead of night. While Marcus and Chloe were downstairs laughing about the high-rise development they were going to build over my grave, Elias and I were documenting the end of their world. I sat at my old desk, my fingers tracing the forged signatures on the deed transfers. Each document I found was a needle in my heart.
I saw a file labeled Samuel Retirement Plan, but inside were only invoices for the developers I had blacklisted years ago.
I found an email thread from 6 months ago, I whispered, my eyes burning as I read the screen. They were talking about the dosage of my blood thinners. Chloe told Marcus that if they thinned it just enough, the next fall would look like a natural stroke. My own son, Elias, he was the one who handed me the glass every night. "He's not your son anymore, Sam," Elias said, his voice hard. "He's just a liability. Keep looking. We need the developer's contract." I opened the bottom drawer, the one with the false back. I found the secret emails, the ones where they promised the city council kickbacks for the zoning changes. I saw the architectural plans for the high-rises. They were going to raise this house to the ground. They were going to turn Martha's Roses into a parking garage. I saw a flashback in my mind, vivid and painful, of Marcus's graduation day. I had handed him the keys to his first firm with such pride, my heart nearly bursting as I told him the city was his to shape. That memory felt like a fever dream now, a cruel joke played by a past version of myself on a man who was too blind to see the rot in the foundation. By 9 a.m., the house had transitioned from a tomb to a stage. I had returned to my bed, feigning the deep rattling breath of a dying man, while Elias waited in the attic loft with his equipment. The sun was high, and the driveway was filling with the expensive cars of people who couldn't wait to see me gone. Elias buzzed my hidden earpiece. "Sam, a courier just arrived at the gate. Marcus met him personally. He didn't bring it inside. He's reading it in the driveway." "What is it?" I asked, my voice barely a breath. Elias was silent for a moment. I could hear the clicking of his camera shutter. "It's a live insurance claim, Sam. It's already filled out. It's dated for tomorrow. They're not just selling the house. They're betting on your heart stopping before the sun goes down. They have a timeline for your death, down to the hour. They're not just greedy, Sam. They're predators, and they think the cage is empty." "Let them think it," I said. "Tell me when the developer arrives." An hour later, the house was buzzing. It was the morbid celebration they called the estate sale and farewell gathering. They had invited the neighborhood board and the developers to witness the passing of the torch.
I watched from the shadows of the upstairs balcony as the real estate developer, a man named Sterling, whom I had blacklisted 20 years ago for stripping heritage buildings, walked into the foyer. Marcus was standing there, a handkerchief in his hand, dabbing at eyes that hadn't seen a tear in years. He was surrounded by the people who had once called me a friend, but who were now looking at the furniture with greedy eyes. "He's resting comfortably upstairs," Marcus said, his voice loud enough to carry to the rafters. "The doctors say it won't be long. He always loved this city, and I know he would have wanted it to grow. He told me himself, just before the last episode, that he wanted me to do whatever was necessary to move forward. He wouldn't want this house to be a burden on the family." Chloe stood beside him, clutching a glass of champagne. "It's so difficult," she added, her voice a practiced sob, "but we have to think of the future. Samuel's legacy isn't in a house, it's in the progress we make." Sterling stepped forward, pulling a gold pen from his pocket. He laid a heavy document on the marble table I had imported from Italy. "Well, Marcus, the city council is ready if you are. We just need your signature on the final zoning waiver, and of course, the power of attorney verification for your father's portion." Marcus reached for the pen. I could see his hand shaking. It wasn't from grief. It was from the sheer adrenaline of the heist. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I simply stepped out from the shadows of the balcony. I walked toward the grand staircase, each step of my cane echoing through the foyer like a heartbeat. The sound was deafening in the sudden silence that swept over the room. Step, clack, step, clack. I descended the stairs with the slow, deliberate grace of a man who had spent his life building things to last.
I watched the color drain from Marcus's face. It was a fascinating architectural shift, his skin turning a shade of gray that I had only seen on the corpses of buildings about to be demolished. "Dad?" Marcus stammered, the gold pen slipping from his fingers and clattering on the marble. "Dad? What are you... The doctor said you're supposed to be..." "The doctor said I was dying, Marcus," I said, my voice projected with the authority of a man who had commanded thousands on a construction site. It turned out I was just listening. I've been listening for 24 hours. And the things I heard in the dark, Marcus.
They were truly illuminating. Chloe dropped her champagne glass. The crystal shattered against the floor, the sound sharp and final. "Samuel," she gasped, her hands flying to her throat. We thought you were... This is a miracle." "It's not a miracle, Chloe," I said, reaching the bottom of the stairs. "It's a reckoning." Sterling, the developer, stepped back, his eyes darting toward the door. "Samuel, I had no idea. Marcus told us you were non-responsive. He showed us the medical reports." "Marcus showed you what he wanted you to see," I said, looking Sterling in the eye. "But I think everyone here would like to see what I've been seeing." I raised my hand. In the attic loft, Elias hit a button. Every television screen in the house, the ones Marcus had installed to show digital renderings of his new high-rises, flickered and changed. They didn't show the city's future. They showed the present. The foyer was filled with the sound of Marcus and Chloe's voices from the night before, amplified through the home theater system. "Wait," Marcus's recorded voice echoed through the house. "Let's see if he's finally going." The crowd watched in a frozen, horrified trance. On the screens, the text of their secret emails began to scroll, the kickback spreadsheets, the zoning bribes, and finally, the most damning of all, the image of the life insurance claim dated for the following day. Chloe's recorded voice rang out, "I'm tired of waiting for him to die. I want to be clear of this old man's smell by Friday." Marcus's recorded voice followed, "We've been thinning his blood for weeks, Chloe. This collapse was inevitable." The silence that followed the recording was a physical weight. The neighbors, the board members, the people Marcus had spent months courting, turned their backs as one. It was a synchronized wall of disgust. Sterling didn't even say goodbye. He turned and fled the property, leaving the contract on the table like a piece of trash. Marcus fell to his knees. "Dad, please," he sobbed, reaching for my hand. I was desperate. The debts. Sterling was going to ruin me. I did it for us. I did it for the family. "You didn't do it for the family, Marcus," I said, pulling my hand away. "You did it because you were too small for the life I gave you. You were a structural flaw in a house I spent 40 years trying to make perfect." The foyer doors opened. Elias walked in, followed by 2 police officers I had requested 20 minutes ago. There was no struggle.
There was no violence. There was only the cold, metallic click of handcuffs as they closed around Marcus's wrists.
"Samuel, please," Chloe shrieked as she was led away. "You can't do this. We're your only family."
"I have a memory of a family, Chloe," I said, "but you are just a squatter in my house." I watched them go. I watched the flashing lights of the police cars fade into the distance, leaving the estate in a silence that was finally clean. The house felt lighter, as if the rot had been carved out and hauled away in the back of a squad car. Elias walked over to me, handing me a glass of water. "You did it, Sam," he said softly. "The lawyers are already filing the paperwork. They won't see a dime of the estate. Marcus is going to spend the next 20 years in a legal vacuum." "It was never about the money, Elias," I said. "It was about the peace." An hour later, I sat on the porch. The sun was setting over the city I helped build, the sky turning a deep, bruised purple that Martha always loved. The house was empty now, but it didn't feel lonely. It felt quiet. I reached into my pocket and pulled out an old photograph of Martha. She was smiling, standing in the garden when the roses were at their peak. I looked at her and felt a sense of spiritual peace I hadn't known since the stroke. I had protected our legacy. I had survived the vultures. Elias stood at the edge of the garden, watching the twilight. I looked down at the forged deed in my hand, the paper that was meant to be my death warrant. I felt the texture of the heavy bond paper one last time, before I began to tear it.
I tore it slowly, methodically, into 1,000 tiny white flakes. I watched them drift from my hands, caught in the evening breeze, looking like a sudden, unexpected snowfall in the middle of a hot Tuesday. I watched them settle on the grass, disappearing into the shadows of the roses. My heart was my own again, and for the first time in years, the silence of the house didn't feel like a prison. It felt like home. The empire was still standing, and I was finally the only one with the keys.